about the process. And one of the non-negotiables we want to talk about right now is the concept of shared values. And while different people may have different shared values, if you do not have them, do not talk about them as a group, as a team, it makes it harder to wrestle with issues because you're coming from very different backgrounds. I heard in your language there's issues where maybe everybody's not connected, don't have strong bonds, are not fully aligned. It gives you a common language. And so to talk about that, I want to introduce two folks who have been part of the discussion, ongoing discussion about shared values in our community, part of the development of them, drafting, listening, refining, and discussion about how we might embrace them or use them, or in some cases people use the phrase submit to them. So with that, I'd like to bring up Blake Musser and Brooke Honzel, please. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Blake Musser.
I'm Brooke Honzel.
And I would like to share a little bit about myself, my testimony towards shared values and Transform Rockford. And probably the easiest place to begin is a little bit about myself and then transition into the beginning of my involvement with Transform, and then I'll ask Brooke to do a little bit herself. Long story short, I'm born and raised in Freeport, which is just west of here, and left for almost 13 years, joined the military, lived in Washington, D.C., got married, decided with my wife that we wanted to move back and have the same experience, the same upbringing that I got to experience, the importance of a small community, and made the decision to move back home, even though we had very successful careers in D.C. And it was the best decision we've ever made. Now I have two wonderful little children and work in Rockford here. Well, shortly after working with Supply Corps here in town, the movement of Transform Rockford started, and was able to meet Mike Shablasky, had a couple really wonderful conversations, and was invited to be a part of one of the first teams, Shared Values. And I enjoy thinking back on the first meeting that happened when we all came together, and I'm not going to call everybody out, but one of my other members is sitting here too, with that got to experience some this experience where we sat down and they asked us to develop shared values. Gave us a very basic rundown, but didn't want to give us too much content because they wanted us to produce it organically. And we joked that they gave us a very short presentation, then locked us in a room and said, produce. And it was actually the best way to do it. Over the course of a couple months, we met for breakfast several times and worked through a lot of our own personal biases, our own personal thought processes, and pushed against each other, and really came up with a completely different document than what we first started with. And we were able to then present in November, and we had developed the values here, but it wasn't exactly what you see up here. We changed definitions, we changed a word, and it has really allowed us to interact and push this process forward because it's a starting point. And so let me talk a little bit more about what shared values is. The point of the shared values piece is each and every one of you are a part of several different communities within the community of Racine, whether it's a faith community, whether it's an organization, and each one of those places hopefully have values. And in some instances, they're written down values. And the beautiful piece is that if you actually start looking across all of these organizations and communities that you're a part of, there's several values that are true that make up the larger community. And that's what's being captured here, is we sat down, and I appreciate the presentation earlier that you showed the cross-section of the different organizations that are going to be making up this wonderful movement that you're doing in Racine. But there's going to be a thread, and there's going to be, and so these probably shouldn't even be the values that you state, and maybe one or two of them, but they need to be organic. Because what it's going to do is it's going to allow some of these hard conversations to start. It's going to allow you to talk to a few of these disenfranchised groups that aren't currently sitting with you. And that's where the beauty is that you have an organization and maybe a community that has historically had issues. Maybe there's a trust issue. And what it does is it allows, when there's buy-in, that, okay, we're going to start right here. So going back to, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with our process, but we had a launch two Novembers ago, I guess. 2? But anyways, it's been a little bit now. And we presented this to the community at large and asked them for their feedback. All of this was supposed to be a rough draft. And as I said, it did change after that, slightly, some tweaks. And during that, I was able to present, and I'm going to actually use two analogies that were presented by one of my other teammates, Jay Sandine. And his was, if you want to go far, you go together. If you want to go fast, you go alone. And along with that was an analogy that I use, which is a compass. This is meant to be a compass, and this is a journey. Everybody's going on a journey. And so you're going to go slow because you all want to go together, and that's the right answer. Shared values is a tool, it's a compass. And the analogy that I use is that you're trying to climb a mountain. It's a hard task, and you can pull out a map, and the compass isn't a map. The map is what you're going to diligently work on and lay out. It doesn't tell you where you are currently, and it doesn't tell you where to go. But what it does do is it helps point you in the right direction when you're a little lost. Because once you start a journey and you start climbing the mountain, you encounter obstacles that you couldn't see on the map, or a storm rolls in and you can't see where you're going. But the compass is always going to point true north, and so it's going to allow you to adjust your course. And sometimes you take a bad path, and maybe it's not a bad path. Maybe it took you out of the way, but you got to see a better view. So it's meant to be a tool, and I know that there's stories out there, and if you want to talk with myself, I have some more, and maybe after Brooke talks a little bit, after we do some questions, I can share my experience with shared values being used in the community and how that's moved forward. But it's meant to help start the conversation and direct the conversation so people feel comfortable to be able to participate as much as possible. So I'm going to ask Brooke